It is going. It's going again because
Third time's the charm.
this is our third time attempting this video here today. We're learning a lot about each other, ourselves,
Technology
and its malfunctions, how to bounce back from episodes of rage and anger when experiencing said technical difficulties. That's me speaking for myself, not so much yourself. Hope has great bounce back, and yeah. Let's talk about how you reacted when you realized that the video we filmed didn't actually film.
Well, my initial reaction was obviously like, that sucks. Like, I honestly felt anxious. I don't know if that was because I was like anticipating your reaction or because I was just like feeling a sense of like, oh fuck, like guilt for something I had maybe done wrong, not pressed the button correctly, like, I don't know, but that's just where my brain went. And so, yeah, I felt like this sucks. My heart rate was up. I didn't feel good. But yeah, I'm pretty good at when that happens, recognizing that it's only like part of me that's like freaking out, and that I do have the ability to tap into different parts of me that are gonna handle the situation differently. And so, yeah, I pretty quickly was able to be like, okay, shit happens. I'm not gonna dwell on this. I can't sit in a puddle of just like being upset because that's not gonna do anything for me. So once I felt like, okay, I'm okay to like move on now, I moved into a mindset that was more like, okay, what are the takeaways from this? I don't want to look at this as like some doomsday thing. Like, yeah, how can I take something positive away from this and then start thinking about what happens next and planning for that. And so that when what does happen next happens, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling positive and refreshed. So yeah, I don't know the timeline on that, but it happens relatively quickly for me in a way that honestly isn't always a good thing. Sometimes I bypass negative emotions because I am not always good at feeling those types of feelings. That is something I'm genuinely trying to work on, sitting in hard feelings. But in this instance, I was, I don't know, able to move through it pretty quickly.
It is what it is kind of mentality, I suppose.
Yeah, I can be pretty laid back and easygoing when I want to be.
I took it a little bit more harshly. I was not happy. It was this again? Are you kidding me? I think I would have gotten quiet. You would have saw that, felt that. Is this the universe telling us we shouldn't be doing this? Is this,
I have those thoughts too.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, for fuck's sakes, again, like, because, like we said, so this is a second attempt / third attempt. We stopped the video and had a quick chat just to be like, whoa, adjust here, adjust there. I was feeling this way about our second attempt, and we've, I don't know, here we are, we're doing it again. We've bounced back, you quicker than me. And what are we here to talk about?
So, our whole video that we created earlier, which was honestly great. It is too bad that we lost all of that, but hopefully we'll be able to capture all the points that we did earlier and more for you. But was all about feedback. This idea of giving feedback, receiving feedback. How can we treat feedback as like a great thing in our life versus taking it as criticism? It's something that has been coming up for me in conversation randomly a lot recently, and was even something that came up in my coursework just yesterday, because being in school, we are going to be receiving a lot of feedback on our written work, on what?
Just making sure we're filming.
It's like, oh God, not again. We're going to be receiving a lot of feedback. So, it's just something that I think, something that we kind of have to practice almost, this act of being able to hear what people have to say, and then also knowing how to tell people things and yeah, those are both just two skills that I think everybody could stand to work on. And so that's, yeah, how that kind of came up for us.
Yeah, the giving and receiving of feedback is happening all the time, whether it's with a colleague or in a relationship or in the projects that you're taking part in, similar to this, right? The ability to kind of raise an issue, point something out, point it out without doing so in a way that isn't going to be received.
For sure.
I guess, right? And so making sure that when we are raising issues amongst each other, we're able to do it in a way that gives us the best chance at being able to effectively give that feedback and receive that feedback. And so I think we should talk first about reasons why feedback might not necessarily land correctly. There's a couple different things to consider. One being there are people who are bad at taking feedback.
Full stop.
I previously have not been good at taking feedback. You yourself, I consider very, very good in your ability to deliver feedback. You've delivered very good feedback to me, but because of where I was at, no matter how good that feedback was, I wouldn't be able to receive it. I get defensive. I, fill up with all these, negative emotions that are kind of like a fight response, right? You're telling me things that I feel I'm doing a good job at, trying really hard at, working my best to do or be or what have you. And so then when feedback is delivered, I'm automatically like, well, what do you want? Like, blah, and I'm just upset. I go into, a fit, I guess is what you would call it. But I work really hard on being able to receive feedback. We've found effective ways of being able to deliver and receive better feedback to see that I think we're doing all right at being able to give and receive feedback.
Yeah, and ultimately, communicate with each other. I feel like in any relationship, if you're going to grow and work through things together, you need to be able to speak to each other in a way that's kind and thoughtful, like taking into consideration the other person's perspective and whatever. And that goes for both parties. If you find yourself feeling defensive, like my version of defensiveness is a little bit less outward, like when someone, whether it was in a workplace environment or you or whatever, would come and be delivering me feedback, if it strikes a chord with me and now I'm feeling defensive, like I've been criticized and that has got me worked up, I kind of shut down, but in my mind am thinking of all of the things that I could say to defend myself or have some kind of a point to be made or what I'm going to say next. And so I'm not even in the present moment receiving, listening at that point anymore. I'm just off in my own world of kind of having a little imaginary battle. And so it's everybody has their own version of what that looks like. I think the big piece is, just being able to sort of in those moments, take a deep breath, recognize when you're getting defensive, which I work really hard to do now, and just be able to take things with a bit of a stride.
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of outlining the how-to of receiving, right?
Sure.
And so that's individual to everybody. I know for myself that when I'm receiving feedback, I have to do a good job of, say, giving myself reassurance that it's not me, it's the issue, or it's not me, it's the task at hand, or if it is between you and I, it's not you versus me, it's us versus the problem, us versus the thing, whatever that thing may be. But so that really conscious having to be on my own side, really having to encourage myself to be like, no, it's fine. It's not a question of you or your adequacy or your XYZ. It's a question of this particular thing that we're trying to team up against.
For sure. But what you're describing is a level of self-observation or self-awareness that takes so much work. That is not something that comes naturally to people. And what does come naturally to people in most instances is to go into that self-preservation or that self-protection mode to get defensive, it feels awful when someone says something to you and it is interpreted as, you're being treated as lesser than. So it makes total sense to go into that defense mode. I think having a level of self-observation, though, to be able to say, like, okay, like, I am being really, triggered right now. Whatever this person is saying is really hitting somewhere, cutting somewhere personal. But in this moment, can I just work to, like, take a deep breath, pause, listen, and just hear what they've got to say, and then, do what you need to do with that. I think the next step of that is, okay, I need to now take space to process this. I need to ask for clarification, or maybe like reassurance. Like, something that I have to ask for a lot is like reassurance that we're okay. Like, there's a part of me that's always like, but we're okay, right? Like, I get it. Like, you've got feedback for me, or I've done something to upset you and I'm going to work on that, but like, we're good, right? I need that. So just being able to, have the self-observation to see that you're reacting in the moment, be able to temper that in the moment if you can, and then whatever comes after that as far as an action, whether that's, like I said, space, repair, whatever, see that through for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And so we can kind of agree that people take things personally. I have the ability to take things personally. You yourself have the ability to take things personally. Everyone has the ability to take things personally. And so when we are in situations where we have to provide feedback, there's always that risk of people taking things personally, being offended by or being upset by the feedback that, again, isn't about them, but is about whatever the issue, problem, etc. is that you're trying to discuss. And so how do we, as the people delivering said feedback, ensure that we are able to give best chance at not turning on defenses?
Well, the act of delivering feedback, I think, is something that has to be really practiced too, because there are times where we do want to default to blame, or maybe even shaming the other person, or saying things that might make the person feel guilty. Again, some of those things can just be our default ways of approaching someone else, and I think it's really important to be able to make sure that you are going into any situation that could potentially become conflictual and approaching it with an energy that is going to render you successful. I very much live by the mantra of be the energy you want to attract. And so if I'm going into a situation with Kev and I'm coming in with, an aggressive energy, would make sense if he meets me with aggressive energy. Like, we as humans mirror each other in ways that we're not even fully conscious of. And so if prior to even giving feedback, I'm able to have a bit of self-reflection, a bit of a pep talk with myself to be able to say, like, okay, like, why are you having this conversation? What do you hope comes out of this? What do you need from this person, and how can you communicate that to them? If I'm able to go in with that kind of a vibe, just to start things off, I think is so important. And then a next thing is to ask the person if they're even open to receiving feedback in that moment. You can think of a simple example of being at the gym, being like, hey, can I show you something? You can tell pretty quickly if somebody's like open to, yeah, sure. Or if they're kind of like, or like, just let me like do my own thing or whatever. You can pick up pretty easily on if somebody's open to receiving feedback. And so same thing in a more, sensitive discussion between the two of us. I literally start those conversations with Kev saying like, hey, I have something I want to talk to you about. It's all good, but are you open to, hearing me out right now? Or do you think, you're off, like whatever. I will just approach that conversation basically seeing if he's open to having a conversation. And if he is, great. If he's not, I have to respect that. There have been times where it's like we aren't able to have a conversation in that moment. And that can happen to people for any number of reasons. Maybe they're tired, maybe they have had a bad day at work, like who knows? But if somebody says to you, like, no, I'm not able to talk right now, even though, like, for me, that's hard because I like to hash things out and, solve problems right away. I have to respect that. But yeah, then if you're able to actually have the conversation, just going into that with a really solutions focused sort of mindset, letting the person know that what the outcome is that you hope to see from this, using, I think something that we always talk about is like using I statements instead of you statements. And I know that's something that I hear talked about a lot, but I still don't see a lot from other people. Like, it's very quick to be like, you did this, or you made me feel this way, or whatever. And I totally appreciate like where people are coming from when they feel that way. But if you're able to reframe it in terms of like, I'm feeling like this, this happened and it made me feel this kind of way, rather than this like blaming kind of language, man, you can get really far with that alone as like a tactic. I don't know, would you have anything to add to ways to give feedback?
Yeah, I mean, we covered, of course, the receiver, and the big dilemma for the receiver is whether or not they're able to receive and what internal discussion they have to have with themselves in order to successfully receive that. It's not me that they're talking about; it's the thing and the behavior. Maybe it's a repeated behavior, and that's a different thing altogether. But it's being able to receive by ensuring that you're not being overly defensive, I think is kind of the summary of that. And then on the other side of it, the person giving the feedback, the key for them is to be kind. And being kind by ensuring that you're not going in aggressive, right? Which is, if you were to go in saying, you this, you that, and well, that's your aggression is now going to be met with my aggression. And so now we're aggression versus aggression, which is kind of like, fuck you, no, fuck you, no, fuck you. And nothing happens. Where if me as a receiver can go in with an open mind and just hear you out, and you as the giver, deliverer of this feedback can ensure that you are saying I statements, right? When this happens, I feel like this, and I think that we can head in this direction, blank. And following that up with something you alluded to as well was the bar for success, right? And so if you were to present said problem and you said, I feel like this when this happens, and so I blank. What I want from you, or what I hope I can get from you out of this right now, is blank, right? Because my defenses are going to come up if you don't lead with the solution. So I'm going to be like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
I was going to say, like, that's a tactic that in many conversations, like conversations with Kev or like work conversations or whatever, something that I try to do, A, is understand the need in the first place. What do I need from this person? And then I tell them that right in the onset. So in like an example, if I was going to Kev and say something had happened and it upset me, it's not the end of the world, but I'm thinking about it enough that I'm like, I should probably talk to him about this to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I might go to him in the onset of like talking about this, whatever happened, and say, okay, I want to talk to you about something that happened. Right now, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to listen to me. And hopefully next time we're in a scenario like this, it won't happen again. But I'm not right now like mad at you. I just can't stop thinking about this. And so I feel like I have to put it out there, but I don't need anything from you right now. And then he knows, he can be like, okay, I just have to sit and hear this girl out. I don't have to agree with her. I don't have to defend myself. I don't have to do anything. I just have to sit here and listen. And so I think like knowing what you need is, again, I appreciate that takes a level of self-awareness, but if you're able to determine that and start with that, I feel like it just allows things to move a lot smoother. And then on the receiver front too, like if Kev hears something from me, even if I've done my best to deliver it in like a nice package, if he after that is feeling like he needs space or whatever, he can express that to me then as well. And then we're able to just, again, respect one another's needs and hopefully move through things smoothly.
Receiving feedback's hard. Like
Definitely.
we should have led with that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, for me to arrive in a conversation where you've said, hey, I want to talk to you about something, and you maybe even ask, like, are you like ready to like hear this? There's many times where I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then you say what you have to say, and I'm like, no way. And then I have my reasons for defending myself. It's like, I've worked too hard at that. I'm trying my best. What do you want? If this isn't good enough, I'm not good enough, right? The defense is like, can come up. And there's been times where I thought I was like ready to receive feedback, and then I was not, clearly. And so what happens in that instance, and what we've done is, taking some space.
Yeah.
Before, that's another thing that I think we're getting better at is in said conflict, conversation, discussion, feedback, session, it gets to a point where I'm in fight mode, I'm not thinking clearly, I have to take some space.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 30 seconds, sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's an overnighter, sometimes it's an hour, who knows. But the ability to, in that moment, take some space so that I can have the huddle with myself to be like, you're not fighting her, she's not fighting you, you guys aren't in a fight, you don't have to win, right? Okay, it's us versus the problem, break. Okay, and then I get to come back, and I get to say, okay, I understand, I hear you, I'm trying to get my defenses to retreat, I'm feeling quite defensive, I understand where you're coming from, and I'm hearing you, I see you. But yeah, it can get messy. It is hard. It's no cakewalk.
No, and you also like, gosh, I feel like it's also individual to like relationship to relationship. Like how you have a conversation with one person and you find a cool groove with them, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work with someone else. But yeah, I think these are all in general just topics that are tips that we can like try to onboard and practice. The one thing I'll say to like acknowledge you is that when you do take space and you communicate to me like I need 10 minutes or whatever, that has been such a game changer for me in our relationship because I am an anxious person. When I feel like there's conflict between us and you need space, if it's not communicated to me, I need space, or this is how long I'm going to be gone, and you're just gone, I'm left sitting there feeling like, oh, it's just an awful, alone feeling. And so I'm always so grateful when you're like, I just need some time. And the one thing that's cool is that as time has gone on as well, I feel like, our bounce back has gotten better too when we've found ourselves in conflict. And I have so much trust in you that you're going to go away, take your space, and that you're going to come back and everything's going to be okay. And I think that's just come from practice between the two of us and building trust between the two of us. And so I'm just always so grateful when you communicate with me, like, this is what I need, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm going to come back, so I can sit there and be like, okay. Doesn't mean I'm stoked while I'm sitting there by myself like, oh God, what's happening? But, it just provides me so much reassurance, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to leave you hanging. You've expressed again in your feedback that if I walk away from an argument or we have that break, that lingering kind of question mark, is he coming back? Is he gone for good? The voices that kind of started coming in, you know, you sharing that when I'm taking what I need, it means that you're getting the opposite of what you need. You know, it's only in you voicing that I'm more called to ensure that my time I've taken has a timestamp attached to it. Right? Making sure that I can tell you, like, hey, I'm not gone. I'm gone for a bit because I'm fuming, but I'll come back and there will be less fuming happening. Right? I don't want to leave you hanging. I don't want to leave you in the dark. I don't want you to think that I'm like leaving. You know, the other side of that too is that I'm trying to quiet the voices that are saying like, fuck this, get the hell out of here, this is bullshit, table flip, right, I'm out of here. And so it's tough to have a real level-headed conversation when you have those defenses just lights and sirens going and all you want to do is peace. You know, it's like, yeah, there is a part of you that wants to split, but the bigger part of you is the one that wants to return, see peace and repair. But yeah, so that's why that bounce back has been quicker and quicker, because I don't want to leave you hanging. And so I have quicker huddles and quicker internal negotiation so that I can come back to baseline.
So all to say, feedback in all its different ways is really hard and something that we need to work on from all angles.
So complex. Like this, we could go so many different ways. What if you were coming at these instances with the really blamey, shamey, judgmental, disgusted kind of, and those are maybe the initial thoughts, what the fuck, what the, like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a joke, right? These, like, we gotta, like, calm that down before we can have a real discussion that is aimed at building rather than being destructive, I guess.
Yeah. Man, I can, like, even acknowledge for myself, like, I used to be, I don't want to say a really passive-aggressive person, but I was definitely more passive-aggressive than I am now. I can remember even, in like one of my first relationships, I would make these just like offhand little passive-aggressive remarks. I remember even then though, so this is like, I don't know, when I was a teenager, observing that in myself and being like, man, I don't want to be that kind of girlfriend, like what the hell? But I think like we're all guilty of doing these things and calling ourselves out on it and like being like, all right, how do I not do that anymore is also really not easy. But yeah, we all have a tendency to just default, go into some of these modes. You know, it doesn't feel good to know that we have like a role to play sometimes. So it can be easier to put everything on another person. But the more that we're just sort of able to be like, okay, how can I show up to this as my best self and do my best in this instance? That's what I want from the other person too. So that kind of stuff just all takes a lot of work.
I think what we've discussed covers, you know, obviously our relationship and relationships, but feedback is happening all the time. Whether it be between family members or between coworkers, colleagues. I think to summarize the way that this works best would be to say that we're looking to collaborate rather than compete.
Yes.
Right? We're all looking to be teammates, all looking for a common goal, all looking for good things to happen. And if we fall into competitive states of mind, well then next thing you know, we're in an argument and I'm trying to win. Well, what does that look like? I'm like being harmful in my words and it's no longer about the issue. It's now an issue between us. And so collaboration over competition across the board, regardless of who it is with. And so I think that there's so many other instances in which feedback is rejected, right? And this might be because you are at work and maybe you are working alongside somebody who was hired around the same time as you, or is the same age as you, or is looking for the next same promotion as you are, right? Maybe you're on the second line and you're trying to make it up to the first line, or whatever hockey analogy I can come up with. Sports, yeah, sweet sports. Yeah. I don't play sports anymore. But so, in these instances, to collaborate would be far more beneficial. Yeah. To be able to go to yourself and say, hey, can I show you something? You have an opportunity then to either accept or reject. And we've been talking a lot about this, and I think we should talk about why we reject it, the negative implications of rejecting feedback, and then the unlimited positive implications of accepting said feedback. I think,
for myself, when I can think to the times that I reject feedback, or just am not, even if I don't outwardly reject it, if I don't fully onboard it, if that makes sense, it often is because there's a part of me that is feeling, if I admit that I don't know something, or that somebody knows more than me, somehow that positions me as lesser than. It makes me feel insecure in some kind of way. And so, it just makes it so that I don't want to feel lesser than. I don't want to tap into those parts of myself that don't feel good enough. And I think we all have those parts of us that don't feel good enough. And so it's so much easier for me to, in that moment, either be like, yeah, I know, or I'm good, or whatever, or like I said earlier, just kind of shut down and get in my own head and whatever, and so I'm not even listening to the other person. Are you checking again? We're just on edge about this recording thing now, my God. But yeah, I think it typically just stems from a place of insecurity, where again, if I'm able to kind of check that part of myself, maybe I can get ahead of the rejection. Because I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is that when you reject feedback, to your point, you are potentially missing out on some really juicy info. You might be missing out on, I don't know, people will share so much with you, and so if you're creating a wall to not let them share, you're really just kind of doing yourself a disservice.
If somebody is looking to walk you through something, teach you something new, show you something they've learned, or what have you, there's an opportunity for you to either accept it or deny it. And the denying it might look something like, I know. And of course that's a very competitive thing, where you're kind of putting a wedge in between the person that is trying to assist you or guide you, where if instead you agree and get shown the thing, go through the discussion, go through the lesson, and then pick up on what's being put down, you've either learned something brand new and added to your arsenal. You've also created greater connection with that person.
I think that's so key.
Gives you an opportunity to be like, hey, I appreciate you showing me that. Thank you so much. You can even follow that up further and be like, anytime you've got something for me,
I want to hear it.
Let's hear it. Right? Because you're just opening yourself up to not just the information, but the person and the teamwork that could come from that relationship that's forming over these instances.
For sure.
The other option is to worry about them knowing more than you, worry about them being better than you, these different reasons that we can create. And you say, I know.
Yeah.
Well, you've rejected it. You're not learning more. You're not better off. There's no rapport built. And you are kind of stepping into this territory of being uncoachable or know-it-all-y or whatever else, to see that the next time that person does have another idea, another lesson, another opportunity to teach you, guide you, they won't. And that's a dangerous place to be in as well. And
absolutely.
And so it's kind of like you get to choose whether you want to be a teammate, whether you want to put aside your ego or this this feeling of whatever it is you're feeling, just to be like, yeah, I'm in. Like, whatever you say, like, I'm in. And man, the friendships you'll build, the guidance you'll receive, the tools you'll add to your kit, it's just so amazing, so long as we can be better at accepting and better at kind of, putting our guards down and whatever else we have to do in order to do that. It's something that I'm trying to practice. And, even in the instances you do know.
That's what I was going to say. Like, there are times that people tell me stuff that I already know. Like, I do know that. But I don't want to, again, like, stop them in their tracks. They may reinforce a lesson that I've already learned about. And so that's fine, because that's just reinforcing something. Great. I get to deeper memorize it. Or they may elaborate or take it one step further or whatever and let me learn even more. Or maybe I can bounce off of them and then have a conversation with them. Again, if they're telling me, if I was like, yeah, I know, now I've cut off the communication. And again, I didn't know what they were going to say next, truly. Like, I'm not a psychic. I don't know what people are going to say. So by me doing that, again, it's just, it can be a real shame to do that kind of a thing and cut off the communication. I feel like I cut you off.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. That was a quick handoff, and you said very much what, something we've discussed and something that we wanted to make sure made it in here.
Definitely.
Right? It's so cool to let people shine. It's so cool to be in a situation where maybe but you just agree to join in on this lesson.
Yeah.
And like you said, maybe you already know, but then there's something within the lesson that you didn't. And now you know a little more. And now you've gotten to allow that person to feel confident in that role of being the teacher or being the feedback provider or being a leader or
guiding you,
whatever else.
And that feels so good. Like, that's the one thing that I always try to think of is, like, when I'm given the opportunity to help someone or teach someone something, that act of giving feels so good to me. And so if someone's trying to do that for me, I want to, like, give them that moment. I want to let them feel that good feeling of sharing or whatever. I was trying to find the right word for this earlier, where I don't think it's a selfless act. Like, I don't quite think that's the correct terminology, but there's something just so nice about sitting back and letting someone give to you. Again, even if you already know. We were talking earlier about, like, I guess alternate phrases or things that you could say if you are in that situation where someone is telling you something that maybe you've heard before, where you could just say, like, oh yeah, like, oh cool, like, just something to let them keep going. A tip that my brother had, Morgan, because we were recently having this conversation with him, was he said that he replaces it with, you're right. So if somebody is telling him something that he already knows, like, oh, you're right. And that just kind of allows them to keep going. I think you could say a million different things, but as long as you're not doing something where you're trying to stop the other person from talking, I think you're golden.
And so reframing the I know into yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right? And being more inviting in at least allowing the person to continue on their thought train or continue, saying what they were going to say without being, I guess, kind of interrupted by what would have been the, yeah, I know. And so.
Yeah, that's important.
I think we've done a good job of covering the feedback operation in terms of our relationship or any relationship. I think we've done a good job of ensuring that there is this idea that collaboration far trumps competition. I think that by allowing people to give you feedback and working to become better at receiving feedback is always a good thing. I'm not sure how else we can really discuss the idea of feedback, or what we've maybe missed, or what we must do now as receivers and givers of feedback. And so
maybe one point that I'll just kind of close with, because it's something that I truly believe, is that people, for the most part, are really good. Like, people are good and kind, and they want to, we're all the same, where we're all struggling with the same sort of things. We all just want to feel good and peaceful with one another. Of course, there are situations where that's not the case. I know that there are people out there that maybe don't want the best for everyone, but I think the overwhelming majority, we all just want to like help each other out and see one another do well. And so if we can take that lens as we move through the world, whenever we're receiving information from anybody, just know that they're likely trying to come from a good place, even if they're not doing a great job at delivering the information. I think if we can just carry that outlook, it'll help us move through life a lot smoother and receive feedback in a better way.
When giving feedback, be kind. When receiving feedback, work really, really hard to not get defensive. Work really, really hard to not start attacking the other person for the feedback they're delivering.
Practice your communication skills, practice your compassion and empathy and self-awareness.
Ensure that you're using the I statements while having these discussions, rather than the shame, blame, disgust, or guilt that could come from not using them. It is very easy to fall into the default of you this, you that, I can't believe it. If you, as the person delivering the feedback, have to get over those initial thoughts,
write about it,
sit down with it. How do I do this in the kindest way possible? Write it down. Oh, that's not gonna work. Write it again. Oh, that's not gonna work. Until you land at a place where you're like, okay, I think I'm prepared to go into this conversation to make sure that the other side has the best chance at receiving this. I'll give the reassurance that I'm coming from a place that wants to ensure that they are receiving it well, and that it's for the better of the team or the individual relationship. And it's not easy, and I applaud any and all efforts at becoming better at these skills. And if any of this video resonated with you, if there's any takeaways that you found most helpful, or want more details on, or have questions about, feel free. We're excited to hear from you guys. These videos are for anyone who gets to see them, and if you're left with questions, then we're super excited to answer those. And so
for sure,
thank you for sitting with us through our podcast, our video series. What is this going to become? What is it? We don't know even what it is. But so we're excited to share some thoughts, sit down with you guys, and thank you so much for being with us.